Welcome back to the Pursuit of Freedom podcast, you wonderful human being. I'm so excited to have you here. Today is part 2 of my conversation with Josh Hoffman. If you missed part 1 last week, please go back and listen to it first because you'll get so much more value listening to both parts. Before I roll the episode, I want to give another content warning. We will be continuing to talk about mental health, and Josh actually goes into his suicide attempt in quite a bit of detail. Other topics we'll be covering include medication and some of the struggles with that, and also what Josh is up to today, because he's more than just his depression diagnosis. But if you need to skip today's episode or come back to it at another time, that is totally okay. You matter and you need to take care of yourself, so there's no judgment here. I'm proud of you. And enjoy today's episode, or I'll catch you next week for a new one. So you're 23 now, 11 years post-diagnosis, right?
Correct.
Roughly. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on who you are now and what it's like, because major depression is not something that is curable.
Oh,
Right. So it's with you for life, but it's not the same throughout your life. So
Correct.
How would you say you are now compared to when you were first diagnosed?
Oh my gosh. It is the world of difference. They're two different people. Honestly, they are two different people. Like, honestly, my past self, my 12-year-old self, maybe not an older version, so maybe not my 17-year-old self, but my 12-year-old self, 13, 14, probably 15, probably would hate me.
Right.
Not necessarily hate me completely, but would just hate that I'm so positive. Like,
Right.
they would just not like that. They're like, why are you so happy? What makes you happy? What, that type of thing. Kind of jealous of it. There's a world of difference, but it didn't just happen overnight. Two of the biggest things that happened in my life actually did connect with my depression and suicidal ideation. In 2018 to 19, I actually did have a suicide attempt. And I actually was, it was an overdose. And I actually was fairly close to actually successfully killing myself. And in the past, there had been so many other times where I had, close moments where I was definitely pondering it or thinking it or even willing to go about it. But something about this day, I just took the action on it. And I think for me, it's weird because when I think back on it, the day I actually did commit suicide, that I hate it. I'm like angry at myself. Like, I think that I'm angry at myself, not that I committed suicide, because honestly, I feel like this is very controversial to people. So like, I think I could have got this enlightenment without doing this. But I think that if I hadn't committed suicide then, it would have been later.
Right.
At some point, just because of how life was going. And also a fair, this is something I left out that I've just remembered of my depression and suicide ideation was so bad. And I wanted to make it through school, and I didn't feel like there was much purpose and passion for me and that stuff still, but I wanted to at least get through school and stuff. Is my main not goal, but my main thing was okay, at 18 I'm gonna kill myself when I'm 18 because I'll be an adult. I guess it's not a goal, but not like a goal, essentially a time limit. And I actually got past 18 before I actually did anything. It was 19. So I was like, oh, I'm already a year past it or something. But it was still like that. And so it was after I graduated 18, or reach 18, it was a ticking time bomb, so to speak, a
Right.
ticking clock, because I had already gotten in my head somehow that I'm going to only live to 18 because I'm going to kill myself. Like,
Mm.
I got into my head so much that it was a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way. And I don't recommend that for anyone. But don't do that, please. But at night, back to that, at 19 I overdosed, and I was dating my ex at the time, and I remember it very vividly that I took the pills. I was actually medicated at the time. I was actually in therapy. So it's not like I wasn't good. I was better. I was better than I used to be, but it still was just a bunch of things added up together.
Yeah.
And people that deal with depression or deal with other mental illnesses, such as bipolar or other anxiety, know that when stressful circumstances add up, especially in one day, it can sometimes push you over that line sometimes, or make it really difficult. And that it was just that type of day for me, I guess. Is like it pushed me over that line, but it's frustrating at that day, because looking back at other days I was at a more intense suicidal state, but I didn't try to commit suicide those days. But this day was actually not that intense compared to other things. But I think what the part of it is I had also a lot of anger at life and myself and other stuff. And anger, if you don't know, can make you take action. And I think that's why it kind of also pushed that a little bit. But I overdosed, and after I actually took the pills and everything, and I had like cried and everything, and before taking them, and then the first thought that came into my head, like not an hour, like, okay, maybe a little bit, I started feeling so an hour or so after it, my plan was I wasn't going to tell anyone. I was just going to die in my bedroom. I forgot I was going to go to my brother's game that night.
Right.
So, but I'm sorry, I'm bouncing all over the place.
That's all right.
But so I remember at like an hour or so later, my heart started pounding a lot, like really, really fast. Because one of the medications I took, my antidepressants, I think, make it so your heart beats faster. And then I think I also took Adderall at the time. And it just made my heart beat, and my heart was beating really fast. And I could just feel like this weird sense of feeling of like almost like my soul wasn't leaving me yet or anything, but it almost felt that way. I don't know how to explain it. Like I was still there. I was still conscious, but it felt like a part of me was like dying. It's the best way, because I was, essentially. And I was like, oh shit, I was sitting in my chair because I was like, oh, no, I'm fine, if whatever, an hour went by, nothing's happened, okay, I'm fine, or, I'll throw it all up or something or whatever. And then an hour went by and this started happening. I'm like, oh shit, am I dying? And the first, like, am I actually like dying now? And it was very like scary for me. And the first thought was, I don't want to die. I want to live. And that stuck with me. And I was laying down, and I remember I have to call someone or something. I don't know why I did this, but I called my girlfriend. She was the closest one to me at the time. So I called my ex, told her I just overdosed and committed suicide. I don't even remember all of what she said. She's like, have you told your mom? I'm like, no. Have you told anyone else? I'm like, no. And then I was like, oh, I have to go to my brother's game or whatever, and hung up on her. So what happened was I'm in the car. I'm still conscious at this time. I'm in the car. It's my brother. My brother had a basketball game. My little brother, my mom, and my stepdad. And I'm conscious still. We're for 30 minutes. I mean, this has been like an hour. I talked to my girlfriend. That was 30 minutes. and 30 minutes. So it probably had been like 3 to 4 hours since I took the pills, and this was a lot.
Right.
I was talking to my mom and my stepdad, and then all of a sudden, my mom started saying stuff, and I was trying to hide it from them.
Right.
And my mom was like, "You're not making any sense."
Mm.
I remember vividly that she said that. "You're not making any sense." I'm like, "What? What do you mean? I'm making sense." And to this day, like in my ears, I was hearing me talk somewhat normally.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe I sounded differently or whatever it was, but she could sense something was off, and she said, you know, "You're not making any sense. Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine."
Mm.
And she's like, "I think we're gonna take you to the emergency room
Wow.
or something, cause I don't know,
You
you
must have
just
seemed really off
or
then.
some
Yeah.
yeah, or you seemed off or something." And I was like, "No, don't do that." And that honestly, that's the last thing I remember.
Mm.
I must have like passed out or lost conscious. I think I was conscious somehow, but I lost my memory
Right.
consciousness
Mm-hmm.
because that's the last thing I physically actually remember. And I remember the next day, I wake up in the hospital bed,
Mm-hmm.
and it's sunny now, and I wake up in the bed. I'm strapped in a little bit. Um, I think my arms and legs are strapped in, and it's like up a little bit. They know the nurse or whatever noticed I was there. My mom was to the left of me. She said, "Good morning" or something, or "You doing all right?" I was like, "Yeah." And then I looked down. I'm like, I'm strapped in, and I
Mm.
like needed to go to the bathroom or whatever. And they unstrapped my arms, and then or they unstrapped my legs, and then eventually I think they unstrapped my arms, I guess, later when they made sure I wasn't going to do anything to myself. This was the scary thing. I was not solid on my feet walking.
Mm-hmm.
What they called it is I had apparently serotonin syndrome, essentially when you have an
Right.
overload of serotonin in your body,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
from my SSRIs, pretty
Mm-hmm.
much. And so I wasn't able to walk really to the bathroom without help, at least that
Mm-hmm.
first day. I needed someone to hold on to, or at least, and it felt really weird. It's like being really drunk or something. I don't even know how to explain it. It's like really weird. And I was worried, honestly. I was like, is
Mm.
this going to be my life?
Mm.
Just being in this wobbly woozy state. Plus, my brain was still like a little foggy.
Mm-hmm.
That first night, my girlfriend came in and talked to me, cried, but I was cried a little bit and stuff, and
Mm.
I held out my arm, but I was still like out of it too a little bit. Um, I tried to console her, um, and be like, "Yeah, I'm okay, I'm alive," and all that type of stuff. And the second day, I started getting better, and I started walking.
Mm.
And the third day, or walking better, and I wasn't fuzzy anymore by that day. And the third day, I was actually by the end of that day, like night, I was actually commissioned out or whatever it's called. Commission, is that the right word? Um, let out of the hospital, and they still had to do like doctors came in and had to like check up on my thing, which I fucking hated. I even like told my mom, I was like, "This is fucking dumb," and she's like, "Well, it's because you try to kill yourself." I'm like, "I know why, but this is dumb." Because the last thing I wanted to do was talk to them, because honestly,
Mm.
I was still partially in a suicidal state,
Yeah.
because I couldn't take my meds, obviously,
Yeah.
because of the overdose, and I also just was like feeling guilty and shameful and all these other emotions too. And I felt one of the things that really broke my heart is my mom. I could tell on like one of the days I was looking over to my mom, or I was talking to my mom, probably the second or third day, and I could tell that she needed to cry or wanted to cry.
Mm.
And I said, because I'm aware of that, and I was like, you know, you can cry, right?
Mm.
And she said, I know, but I want to be strong for you.
Mm.
And that broke my heart.
Mm.
Like that she felt that she had to hold her tears in around me, at least then,
Mm.
because I was going through that. Like that really like broke my heart too. That being said, when I was actually in the hospital on the third day, I was on a higher upper floor than I was on the like first floor. I was still on a floor, but like I could see a window. It was a smaller room
Right.
and I could see the window. While the other one, the bed was facing towards like the lobby-ish area.
Mm-hmm.
And even then, I was still suicidal and a little bit. And I looked out that window and some thoughts I had. I remember I was like, you know, I could jump out that window
Mm.
and I probably wouldn't survive that. And then I remember also when we were talking a little bit of why I did it and all these types of things a little bit, driving back, because me and my mom, just my mom and I, driving back in her car back home. I remember even then I wasn't going to do anything, but I still remembered I was very suicidal and it was intense. And after that, because I was in control of my medication at that point, after that, I wasn't in control of my medication for obvious reasons. And, well, a lot of things happened
Mm.
through that, but the positive that came out of that experience, and well, yeah, the positive specifically that experience was that I figured out that because up until that point I was living the only reason why I hadn't really committed suicide up to that point or hadn't like done anything is because I was living for other people.
Right.
I was living on their terms, essentially living for other people, living
Mm-hmm.
because yeah, I was living for other people. But something changed after that, and I figured out maybe it was just that one thought I had of I don't want to die, I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
And up at that point, maybe I realized I wasn't really living for me,
Mm.
and something clicked where I maybe not instantly after that. I don't know how long it was, but definitely in like a year or so. Uh, I've completely changed in the way of that. I've changed from living for other people and according to their values and what they expect of me and all those stuff society expects of me, for instead living for myself and living for my own
Mm.
values and living for my own expectations and living for what I want out of life and no one else.
Mm.
And yeah, and like so much a different person. uh After that, I mean, I also kept I did lose like the therapist I had, that was a CBT therapist. um because of the suicide attempt, he uh stopped being my therapist but
Right.
sent me to DBT,
Mm-hmm.
which actually was a very positive thing because DBT has helped me a lot.
Mm.
And I got still the medication I had, and actually I got a little bit different, but essentially got medicated again. Some of them maybe a little bit differently. And yes, also, this is like a little bit off topic, but it relates to the medication therapy, or
Mm.
not medication therapy, but medication, is at least for my doctor, my therapist office or whatever, which was the CBT one, not the DBT one. but I would imagine DBT also has and other places have it, is if you guys have the ability to, I would highly recommend, if you don't want to feel that sense of like being a guinea pig and trying all these different medications that don't work, because I know that was one of the things I hated, and I was like, I don't want to keep trying a bunch of medications and them not working and having the side effects and still not feeling better. There was a thing that my psychologist or psychiatrist is what they're called, psychiatrist brought up, that essentially they can do a gene testing. It's just they take a swab of your saliva. Maybe for some people it's blood testing. And that definitely helped. It pretty much tells you what medication is effective and not effective and all those types of things, and or more likely to work. And the first one that we tried for the SSRI or whatever it was worked way better than any of the other ones had worked.
Wow.
So I highly recommend that if you can talk to your psychiatrist, if you guys do have one, or if you don't and you're interested in going the medication route, or feel that you do need to, and you get a psychiatrist, that you ask them if they have gene testing, I think is what it would be called, but a gene testing of some sort for medication effectiveness, and see if you can do it earlier than later. They might tell you, oh, you have to, well, before you can do it, you have to try 2 or 3 medications, and then if that is so, do that. And if those don't work for you, then I would recommend just doing the gene testing. And then I mean, you might not have as much success as I did, but I feel like you're more likely, because
that's fascinating, because I didn't even know that was an option. So for those of you listening, you know, I'm also medicated. I have bipolar type 2. And it was a journey getting the medication mix right. Like, so frustrating and unsettling. And in fact, before I got the bipolar diagnosis, they misdiagnosed me with depression.
Oh, really?
And depression is part of bipolar, right? It's extended periods of depression, and then also mania or hypomania. And what I would say is you really need to be vocal with your doctor with how you're feeling and what the medication is doing.
True.
Because the first lot of medication I got, I felt for the first, this is probably not the best language, but I felt like a mad person on this medication. It made me absolutely manic. It made me worse.
Yeah.
And the doctor said, "I'll just try it for a few weeks longer." And I remember walking out of the office, I was in the car park, I was just crying and I was agitated, and I called my mum and I was just swearing my head off at her. I'm like, I can't fucking do this, you know? And my poor mum's like, what do I do? You know, I was in my 20s. She lived, you know, a flight away. You know, we weren't close.
Yeah.
Like, I can't fucking do this, the stupid fucking doctor. Anyway, thank goodness she called the doctor and said, look, I think you need to make a change. Like, my daughter is not coping.
Yeah.
And thank goodness she did that, because they switched the medication, and they say it can take weeks or months to notice a difference. I felt a difference the next day. Like, it wasn't like I was better, but I went, ooh, this feels a bit different. And that medication didn't turn out to be quite the right mix, because they still thought I just had depression by itself. And so I had to keep being vocal. I said, yeah, I'm feeling better, but I'm just noticing, like, I was still experiencing depression, but I was saying to the doctor, I'm getting these highs, you know, like I just get obsessive with things and really energetic and believe anything's possible. And then, you know, this goes on for weeks, and then I just crash into a depressive episode.
Yeah.
And he sort of went, And, you know, I was doing my own research at the time. That's the kind of person I am. And I was sort of beginning to suspect I might have bipolar. But it took a lot of pushing this doctor to even explore that. And I had to I was seeing a GP, and, they have knowledge, but they don't have that specialized knowledge. They're a generalist, right? And I pushed and pushed and pushed. I said, I want to see a psychiatrist. And initially, he didn't. He said, no, you can see a psychologist. But psychologists in Australia can't prescribe medication. They don't have that knowledge or that power.
Gotcha.
And the psychologist he sent me to was useless. It just made me really agitated. But I kept pushing. And eventually I saw a psychiatrist, and wow, what a game changer. She tweaked the medication, and I'm on 2 different ones now. I'm on an antidepressant and a mood stabilizer.
Gotcha.
And that combination for me is just so much better. And it did
Right.
take a few tries of different combinations. Like, it wasn't like it was perfect overnight. But that wouldn't have happened if I didn't keep pushing. And it's hard because you don't always have the energy or ability to do that. And initially it was my mum who helped me push through, and the medication then helped me get to a space where I had a bit of, okay, I can try and push. But I had people around me who were going, Rosie, just keep pushing this doctor. You need to see someone with that specialist knowledge. So I would say, do your best to just vocalize it. The doctor does not know what you're going through.
Oh, yes. I would, I agree with you 100% that something that I had to learn, because my mom actually was such a strong advocate, which was a positive but also a negative in some ways, because as I got older, and for medication and for therapy and some other stuff, I kind of, and for other things that like work, even like you have to be an advocate for yourself. And I recommend, especially if you guys are young listening, that it's a important skill to learn. Like, it's not easy. It's really not easy, but to learn when to stand your ground and essentially pick your battles, and to know when you need to advocate for yourself, especially with doctors, because I've had experience with my general doctor and just doctors in general, that I think a lot of doctors mean well, psychologists, psychiatrists in general, and general doctors, but they don't know. They fully don't know what is going on in your body. You know what's going on in your body.
Exactly.
And the only way they're going to be able to fully help you, or hopefully fully help you, is if you communicate to them and sometimes be a little bit of, dare I say, a hard ass with them. I mean, there were times where my mom had to really put her foot down and say, no, this is what's going on. You don't get it. And sometimes you have to be like that with them, because sometimes they really don't get it. Like with medication, sometimes they'd be like, oh no, try that for two more weeks. And if you're experiencing, especially very negative symptoms in the first few days, you got to say to them, you have to advocate for yourself. If you don't have someone else that can advocate for you, especially, to say to them, no, I'm not going to take this anymore. I need something else, or I'm just not taking this anymore because I'm having X symptoms.
Yeah.
So
it's so important. It really is, and it's not easy. It's not an easy.
It's not
journey.
an easy thing.
For me, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts, I kind of struggled with the idea of being on medication for a while.
Oh yeah, I struggled with it for a while, and I think I can't speak for every single individual, but I would say a high percentage of individuals that deal with some sort of mental illness does have this experience where they are in the stage where they're maybe gonna get medicated or maybe not. Like maybe they're seeing a therapist or maybe they haven't seen a therapist, but they're thinking about going to therapy. They're thinking about maybe medication, right? But they're like, well, I don't want to be one of the, like, there's so much stigma with it in our society of like, oh, well, especially in I can only speak for American society, but American society, and I think a lot of other societies, to be fair, but American society really pushes on this thing of do it yourself, be on your own. If you can't, you have to figure it out yourself. No one, no one else really help you, so to speak.
Yeah.
And well, that's the reality is that's just not true for anybody. And with so with medication, it's kind of there's the stigma, especially with like mental illness medication, where people are like, well, I don't need it. I don't want to rely on that. I don't want to need it as a crutch. I want to be, natural. I want to be all natural. I don't want to feel like I need a drug to be happy or need a drug to function properly. But for it, and that may be true. For some people, that is true. Sometimes you don't necessarily need a drug, but sometimes you don't know if you do need one or if it will benefit you. I caution this, or I'm careful to say need, because need is such a strong word for that. But if it will benefit you and actually like help, because sometimes you won't know until you try.
Right.
And I know that for me, there definitely was this huge stigma where I was like, I don't need this. I don't need a drug. What? I don't want to rely on drugs. Like that was the thing for me is I really didn't want to rely on drugs. And I knew that, cause my grandma, takes medication for her, and she went through the process of having to try all of them. I really did not want to be a guinea pig. That's how I word it. I didn't really want to be that guinea pig testing all these different drugs that have these potentially negative side effects and all these things, and still feeling depressed. And maybe some of the other medications make me feel even worse, like they did for you. Like I had one that made me have this really like I took this one for like 1 to 3 days, and like the second or third day I had to stop taking it because I felt so out of it and so foggy in my head. I was like, it almost felt the same as when I had my suicide attempt, because it with the fogginess of the brain, not like the other part, but the fogginess. Like I was just like, I couldn't think straight, really.
Yeah.
So yes, I don't think everyone needs everyone can, how do I word this? I don't think everyone needs medication, but I think that you should also not necessarily fully cross it off as a possibility.
Right.
Especially if you haven't especially if you've been struggling for a while and other things don't seem to be working.
Yeah, what I would say is medication won't cure you.
Oh,
I'm
yes.
speaking from my experience, but it's not going to cure you. There's no cure for depression or bipolar or all these what they call illnesses or disorders. I really dislike that it's called a disorder. That
I
doesn't
think that's
make me feel
another
great.
misconception.
Yeah.
About the medication. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, for sure. It does not fix you. You could be on medication and still be totally fucked up, if you're not doing the other work, right?
For sure.
But what medication helped with for me, like I couldn't function. I couldn't even get out of bed. Just getting changed was a mission. Having a shower, and people would say to me, just take it day at a time. And I'm going, I can't even think that far ahead. Like
Exactly.
A day for me was just so overwhelming. And what medication did for me is it helped me begin to function again. It just took the edge off that little bit. So, okay, I can get out of bed today. All right, just those small steps. That's what it helped me do. It gave me just enough of a boost that I had the capacity to be able to help myself. So therapy and, if exercise is a thing for you, all these different things, it gave me that little boost. But I would agree, you were saying in American society, the view of medication over there, and it's I would say is very similar over here and is often
Yeah.
seen as the easy way out.
Yeah, and I hate that. I hate that thing of like, I hate that thing. Like, I also think there's that stigma also with that same wording for suicide of it's the easy way out.
Oh.
And I really, from my own experience with actually committing suicide and just also talking with other individuals and my own research and understanding of depression and mental illness and suicide and all these other different things of suicide attempts aren't, or suicide is not the easy way out. I would honestly say it's one of the hardest ways out because the majority of it, the people that have sadly died or lost their lives from suicide, some people listening to this may understand, but if you haven't gone through it, the best way I can explain it is that the suicide is just, sorry, I'm trying to collect my thoughts here.
It's all right.
That it's a hard way out because of the fact that most people that actually most people that have committed suicide or even taken a suicide attempt and survived have the awareness and realization that it's going to hurt people, hurt others. They already know about they already have that guilt and shame from society. They already know the implications of it. But they just feel so, like, from my perspective, if they feel so hopeless, so worthless, so pointless, so their emotions and their feelings and thoughts are so intense that they feel the only way to cure them or the only way to fix them or even fix themselves is to commit suicide. And I think that is a lot of people actually, when they commit suicide, people say, oh, the other things that people say is, oh, that's a selfish act.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it is for some people, but I would say the majority of the time that's not true. A lot of the times, because at least my experience, I can't speak for everybody, but my experience with depression is that when I've had those really bad suicide ideation where it's getting to that point where it's close, or it has, like, it's gotten to that place where it's close, or with my suicide attempt, that the thought process is not that, oh, I'm doing this as a way out. I mean, yeah, it's doing it as a way to fix myself, like the way to get out of the emotions and thoughts. But at least for me, my experience was I'm doing this to save people from myself.
Right.
Because I felt that I was a threat or a nuisance or a waste of space, a waste of time. And I was essentially taking up resources, taking up money and food that other people could be using. And I think a lot of people that have gone through that can understand that those thought processes and feelings.
Yeah, and that's not selfish at all. In fact, that's selfless.
Yeah.
You know? And I think, yeah, it's difficult for, whilst I haven't attempted suicide, I have had those thoughts, and I resonate with what you're saying. And from what I've heard from, others who have attempted suicide, the thoughts are, yeah, they are the common thoughts that people have. It's not from a place of being selfish at all. So I think that's important for people to understand. And to say that it's selfish or the easy way out is just
It's
really,
invalidating.
it is invalidating, it's insensitive, it's dehumanizing, and I think that language really needs to stop.
I agree.
Mm.
The other thing that I was going to say that also people I think is that is a common phrase that's said
Mhm.
is that the world would be better off without them. And if you just take that one phrase that's commonly heard, and we know that is commonly said in the
Mhm.
thoughts of suicidal people that have suicide ideation and suicidal thoughts, of just take that one phrase apart, that's a selfless thought and phrase. I mean, mostly it's a selfless phrase when you say like, I think the world, I think, you feel that you're so with the feeling of depression or the mental illness that you feel that you're so much of a waste of a human life that you feel that the world's not even the people around you, but the world would be better off without you.
Mm.
And I think that is almost one of, I mean, there's other ways of selfless, but that's almost the definition of selfless right there.
Mm.
Again, not that people should take their lives, uh,
Mm.
but I think people are thinking of it from the wrong angle. I think why people think it's selfish and why people think it's the easy way out is because people that have lost a loved one or lost someone that they cared about that did commit suicide, they may call it selfish or an easy way out. And the only reason I think they say that is because of the fact that they did deeply care and love for that person, and they can't
Mhm.
wrap their head around fully why they
Mm.
did it. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard for a person to wrap their head around why a person would or wouldn't commit suicide.
Mm.
I imagine the people in my life, my loved ones, and anybody that was in my life at the time, still probably can't fully wrap their head around of why
Yeah.
then. And even me, even myself, I can't wrap my head around exactly why that day I did other than another day. Like that's one of the things I'm actually like frustrated with myself of like there were like looking back on my life, I'm like there were so like not that this is a good comparison or a good thing
Mm.
to do necessarily, but like there were so many worse days that you were having emotionally and suicidal ideation and all these types of things, but you did that day. Why that day? Like why was that day the thing? And the
Yeah.
only thing that I can really come to the consensus is that it was a compounding effect potentially,
Mhm.
where
Mhm.
it's just build up of build up of build up. So that's the other thing to take into account for people of
Mm.
for all emotions, not just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
not just depression, but think about if someone was angry and they yelled at you or sad. Um, Obviously, it's hard to remember that if they're yelling at you to not get angry
Yeah.
with them, but also come at it from a place of they're probably not just angry with you. That's also anger that's probably compounded from other events and other situations where they just
Mhm.
held it in and weren't angry at those individuals, and you just were the place where it couldn't be held
Exactly.
on anymore, so to speak. The wrong
Yeah.
place, wrong time situation.
Right. Yeah. And I think all behavior has an underlying reason for that. So,
Yeah,
while someone might be, like for me in the parking lot, swearing at my mum, I wasn't angry at her, but there was this build-up of all these things going on that
exactly.
it was just her that it was projected to. And, we have no idea what people are going through. So I think this whole thing of leading with empathy, and it's
hmm
really hard. It is
it's
hard,
hard, of course. It's
but
really
it's
hard,
so important.
but it's good to remember to
Yes.
try to remember that everybody is going, like, this has been said so many times, but it's true. Like, everybody is going through their own shit. They're going through their own stuff. You don't know exactly what is going through their head. And to think of it as, honestly, I don't want to put this narrative out there, but honestly, it might make it easier for some people of think of it as they are having a bad day than a good day. Because if they're having a good day and you're, positive to them, then they're just going to have a better day. But if they're having actually a bad day and you think of it as they're having a bad day, well, you might bring their mood up. But I also don't necessarily want to come at it from the narrative of like, oh, just assume everybody's having a bad day. But in some ways,
don't assume that they have ill intentions, right? Don't assume the worst of that person.
No, never.
We don't. Yeah.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But I will say, if you are having that, having a hard time with empathy, that's one way you could maybe help yourself.
You've shared your story of how you attempted suicide, and that's a lot, and you've come through that.
Yeah.
And I know that you've got some great things going on. Like, for example, I know you've got this podcast going on, The Burningly Passionate, it's titled. Can you share a bit about what's going on in your life at the moment that, let's pretend depression isn't in this conversation, right? It's part of us, but let's put that to the side. What's going on in life for you at the moment that's exciting and bringing you joy?
There's actually a lot, believe it or not.
That's awesome.
So I'm honestly, if I was to explain it, I'm probably the best right now that I've ever been. But right now, some of the things got going on is I got the Burningly Passionate, like you mentioned. I got my other YouTube channel that I've been working on for a while. It's called JH Productions Media. It's JH Productions right now, but if you look on other channels, it's JH Productions Media. I've been working on that for a while. Before then, I had a gaming YouTube channel that I put a lot of work in.
Cool.
But not really actively working on that because I've kind of been focusing on other stuff because I'm not really gaming anymore. I have a good relationship and continuing my relationship with my girlfriend, and we're traveling a bunch on the weekends. Recently, I just went over to the Redwoods, and yeah, there's those types of things, and then I'm working, a full-time job. That's not the thing that I want to be doing right now, but it's got to make money somehow right now in the meantime. And I'm still being always self-aware of my energy, my mood, all those still those things. And yeah, the best way I can explain it is I am definitely one of those people that is always doing something. I always have something. Even if I'm not doing exactly all those things I explained there, I'm always doing something, or most of the time. Sometimes I'm relaxing somewhat, but the majority of the time, I always have something in the works. Right now, my new, not interest, but my new thing I'm trying to work on so I can make money doing something I care about more is I want to dabble or get into freelancing because I really want to be able to work remotely and start getting on that, making that kind of as a mindset and actually getting into the work and actually be making money from it, so I can quit this job and I can actually be working remotely, and then I'm location independent. So if I wanted to, because I enjoy traveling, and that way I could go move over to Australia as an example, or Southeast Asia, or
Yeah.
Europe, or somewhere in South America. I could travel to anywhere in reason. I mean, you have to have some sort of funds to do that, but you know what I mean. Like if you have an internet connection and the willingness to do it and have a platform, no matter if it's your own business, which I'm working on trying to do at some point, but freelancing in the meantime, then yeah, I want to get there, and then I mean, we'll see how the freelancing thing goes, and if the freelancing thing goes, maybe I do that for a few years while also working on my own business stuff, and who knows?
I mean, that's so exciting. And I really resonate when you're saying, you want to do work that's more meaningful.
Oh, yeah. That's been a thing in my life forever. Like,
oh, same. This is something that causes me so much turmoil.
Yep.
But, I'm making big strides. Like recently I put in my notice at my 9-to-5 job, and it's, on paper, it's a great job. I get paid really well, but I'm like, fuck that. I want to do things on my terms. And yes, it's a risk, but my last week is next week. I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to set up a business
I'm proud
because
of
I
you.
really believe. Thank you. Yeah, it's it feels good. It feels right, and I know if I don't give this a go, I'll just regret it.
Exactly. That's essentially, for anyone that's interested, that's essentially what my podcast is about.
Yeah.
It's essentially talking to people like you, just about talking about what they're doing, about what they want to be doing. So maybe they are working their 9-to-5 job, or they're doing something that they don't like to do, or they're younger, or whatever it is, and just getting them to take that step, and talking to individuals like yourself that either are taking those steps or maybe are farther down the line and have taken those steps and learned from those people, or are other people that are like way down the line and learn from those people. And so we can all grow and learn as one, and instead of it being this thing of like, oh, everybody just has to work a job in a miserable environment. I think over time, I obviously somebody has to work, but I don't think that. I think over time, more and more people are going to be doing what they love and care about. And like, as an example, COVID for a lot of people opened their eyes to, oh shit, I don't want to be doing this job for the rest of my life. Or they had some time for reflection, and they're just like, I miss socializing with people, or whatever it is.
Yeah. I mean, life is so fragile. I know for me, the big events in my life that really brought that into perspective is when I was 21, I lost my dad in a freak accident. And when I was, I think, 27, I lose track of time, but it was 2019, my mum died of terminal cancer, and it was very quick. And those events,
sorry for your loss.
No, thank you. And it's, it's shit and I can get angry about it, but it's also, it's helping me live a better life, because there's not enough time, right? And you don't know what's going to happen. Like for you, for whatever reason, on that one day when you were 19, you attempted suicide. You could have been gone from this earth, right? I don't know. Like if I was to live as long as my dad, I'm already over halfway through my life. Same with my mom. Like who knows? Like you just never know. And so I think I really adopt this mindset of give it a go. Like you don't get caught up in the what ifs or letting fear get in the way, because that is not a way to live. And especially for people like us who, live with chronic mental health conditions.
Oh yeah,
We know what it's like to be in the depth of despair. So when we're in a place where we're even able to think into the future, which is not something I could do when I was in a dark place, it's just liberating. So I'm excited at the moment. Like I'm excited for life, and I get the feeling that you're excited too, and you're moving towards this, freer life. And Will we ever get there? Who knows? But I'd like to think
Oh,
that
I'm gonna
moving
get
in
there.
that direction. Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
I mean, like for at least the career-based stuff, like freelancing and business stuff, like it's not a matter of like if I'm gonna get there, it's a matter of when.
Yeah, love it. It was just so awesome to chat. So thank you so much. And I'm looking forward to coming on your podcast. And for anyone who's interested in your podcast, Josh, can you remind them what it's called and where they can find it?
It is the Burningly Passionate. It is on any platform that you probably would listen to your podcast on. It's on Apple, that Apple Podcasts. I think that's what they're called now. Apple Podcasts, Spotify. I personally listen to my podcast on Spotify. You can always go to my website to listen to my episodes or figure out I have a blog article on some of the other places, and that's just theburninglypassionate.com.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. It's good to have you on.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for having me on too.
If this episode resonated with you at all, could I please ask that you share it with a friend who you think could get value from it? And whilst you're doing that, make sure you follow and subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss another episode. And whilst you're following or subscribing, please leave us a rating, preferably 5 stars, and also a written review. Doing each of these things is going to help this podcast reach more people and impact more lives, which is, at the end of the day, is what we're here to do. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Remember, you matter, you're worth it, and you are so, so capable. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week.